This podcast is part of the Midwest Podcast Network. Find out more about our other shows and how to support our network at MidwestPodcastNetwork.com. You are now tuned in to Westworld FM, a podcast about HBO's Westworld. My name is Alex.
And I am John.
Today we will be discussing Season 2, Episode 3 of Westworld, titled Virtu y Fortuna. And while we will not be discussing the next time on preview at the end of the show, we will be spoiling everything through Season 2, Episode 3 of the series. So please pause and go catch up if you're not current on the show. You can find more episodes of our podcast at westworld.fm. We're also Westworld FM on Twitter, and you can send feedback to westworldfm@gmail.com to tell us what you think of our show and share your thoughts on HBO's Westworld. Send us corrections, observations, or anything regarding Westworld or our podcast. If you enjoyed this show or any other show on the Midwest Podcast Network, please consider heading over to patreon.com/MidwestPodnet. That's MidwestPodnet, and pledge as little as $1 a month to help us make our network even better. That includes helping us cover the costs of hosting these podcast episodes and our internet stuff. We are not quite at the goal of being completely in the black.
Right.
But we're about halfway there, and it's exciting. So thank you to everybody who's donated to us, and special thanks to Jason K., who's pledged at the level of $10 a month.
Thanks, Jason.
Yes. Nick is not quite back from his honeymoon, but he will be.
He may never return.
He will return.
No, mentally, I mean, he's in a different world.
That's true.
Now.
Yeah, he might be like a Office Space kind of situation. Yeah. He'll come back in his body form. But I've
always been told never to get married, but I'm getting married in like 4 months. So
no, he will return. He will be back. Hoping for next week. Everybody hit him up on Twitter at Nick Blauvelt. Tell him that you want him back.
I'll come back anyways.
Yeah, there you go. But in the meantime, we do have some corrections. Last week I mentioned that Arnold's house that he was showing Dolores looked like the Ennis house.
Yeah.
The Frank Lloyd Wright Ennis house. Turns out it is an actual Frank Lloyd Wright house in Pasadena, California.
Yes.
Called the Millard House. They supposedly shot on location at the house.
Oh, right on. That's cool.
Yeah, it is a real house that exists. It's not in weird Neo-China city.
Right.
But it does exist. So we did get some emails sent to westworldfm@gmail.com. Fred C. wrote in. He said, welcome back. Glad you guys are back on the podcast airwaves for the new season. I'm slightly delayed in chiming in with my wild speculations to kick out the season, but glad to throw them out there anyway. First, I want to say that you guys blew my mind with the Jim Delos as Abernathy theory. Holy shit, that seems completely plausible to me. I need to go back and watch the first couple episodes in season 1 to see if there are any tells that hint at that other than his reaction to the photo. Fred, please write in. Let us know if you find anything.
I blew my own mind with that one.
It's pretty good. It's a pretty good. The pieces are there for it to be true, I think.
Yeah.
But we'll see if they decide to go that direction. He wrote in here, said, where is Westworld? According to another podcast that I listened to, Decoding Westworld, which is a very good, it's David Chen and Jonah Robinson, who may have inspired us to do shows such as Gone to Texas and Westworld FM. Season 2, Episode 1, 29 minutes and 2 seconds in. Last season on HBO Go, the scene where Maeve is looking at her paper with the location of her daughter. The Finnish subtitles actually give coordinates that reference an island in the South China Sea called Mischief Reef. Some of the reveals of this season, that makes a lot of sense. I still am not taking that as canon, but I don't have any reason to think it's not true with the Chinese army that's there. And also, I think some people at least walked away with us thinking that it was actually Los Angeles. I don't think it's Los Angeles.
I like my dystopian American future.
You can live with that, but I think it's actually just some mock-up fake Asian city, fake future Asian city that they made up. So we'll see if they ever give us any more on that. I don't even necessarily know that they need to, but we'll see if they do. Fred also says, my wild theory, I think that Bernard is not himself, literally. I think that someone else's brain egg has been placed in him. My vote is Dolores, had hers dropped into him to allow her to escape. From the way that he was looking unfamiliarly at his hands. To his confusion, to his revelation, I killed them all. It hints that someone is actually wearing a Bernard skin suit. Cue Buffalo Bill scene from Silence of the Lambs, LOL. I have seen this theory out there that Bernard is not himself.
Yeah.
I don't think it's true because the way that the editing of the show shows Bernard focusing on his hand that's shaking and then having him like slip through time backwards into like a previous time state.
Mm-hmm.
If he's Dolores, then he wouldn't have those memories to slip back to.
Right.
So I think that theory in particular is not quite correct. Is it plausible? For sure. Like, we know that these hosts have mind eggs. We haven't seen what happens when you take one out and put it into another body.
Right.
But I would assume that there's some weird cognitive dissonance that occurs and makes them all bewildered and kind of like weirded out. But I don't think that the 2 weeks later Bernard is somebody else. I think he's got to be Bernard.
Or maybe see. if he keeps injecting himself with the goo or whatever, like maybe that's like some genetic coding stuff too. That's like he's getting bits and pieces of other hosts like into his brain goo.
Maybe, yeah. We don't know how. We have literally no idea how any of that works.
Yeah,
but we'll see. He had a question here. In the scene where Dolores and her crew are at the remote refurbishment outpost, she wipes the moisture from the board member's face and has a flashback to Arnold's, a.k.a. Bernard's home, where she is also touching moisture on the wall. This seemed odd to me because when her and Arnold visited this house, it wasn't raining, so shouldn't there be moisture on the wall? Do you think this means that she had another visit to the house that we haven't seen yet? I've got nothing else. Welcome back. That's not true because he wrote back here in a second as well. I was thinking about that too, and it seemed weird. Like, she certainly does the time slippage thing. It's her touching her fingers in front of the blocks that are at Arnold's house.
Yeah.
But there wasn't any moisture on them. She does touch them at one point.
She could be rolling a booger.
Yeah, it's possible. I think we've seen a lot of these hosts focusing on their hands and like tactile feelings that are taking them back through their memories. So I think it's less of like I think it might be less of moisture. Like even in that flashback scene when you look at the wall, it doesn't look to me like there's any moisture on the wall, but it's her just kind of rubbing her hands together after touching the wall, and it makes me think like it's that little bit of muscle memory or something that took her back to that moment.
Right.
I don't think it's so much that I totally think she could have visited the house again. So we could certainly see that be the case.
Yeah, I mean, that seems pretty plausible.
Yeah, so I'm not going to rule it out, but I don't know that we can put too much stock into it yet.
Right.
So Fred also wrote in, he said, as one of your African-American listeners, I can tell you that I was not the least bit offended by Black Dallas employee being taken by Dolores to do her bidding. I looked at it as him being a hostage as opposed to him being taken as a servant. He's not being degraded or treated less than. He's there because he has a specific skill in helping her raise her army. That's great. No,
yeah,
that's exactly the kind
response.
Of perspective that I was looking for. So it wasn't so much that I was trying to be offended on behalf of anybody. I was just wondering how people of color felt about that. So thank you, Fred, for writing it. But no, great feedback. Thanks again.
Yes, thank you.
One of our friends from season 1 did write in. He said, this is Alan. He said, Los Angeles must change quite a bit if they stopped using English. He sent me a picture of the Space 49 characters that were on the sign there. And I said, there's English on there. It could be part of a Chinatown. 2 of the tallest, most recognizable buildings are definitely in LA. I think they just mixed a few cities together digitally. And he said, skylines are faked all the time and effects work. So the only thing I paid attention to was how there were no signs or billboards. Any city skyline usually has big signs on various buildings, but they made a point to only show this one bit of writing. And he said, I would use the let's show Chinese characters as a clue more than a fake skyline, especially since they already introduced us to the Chinese soldiers. And that makes perfect sense. He did mention, he said to us here, I'm not listening to any podcast this season except yours, but you may want to go back and watch those city scenes again. There's something else, ... And then he wrote back and said, never mind, I did a search and everyone is already onto this, but it feels good to figure stuff out independently. And I asked him twice what he was speaking of, and he didn't respond to me. So
So you got to go back and do it yourself.
I sat there. I watched it twice, and I was like, I don't see anything. There is a futuristic car on the road at one point. There's only like a few people that walk by, but I couldn't glean any other real information.
Yeah.
Off of the streets that they show. So
interesting. I'll have to go back and take a look too.
Yeah. And then there was one other quick piece of feedback that we got here. Sue wrote in. Sue came to us in the Alienist recap.
Okay.
She joined us at that adventure. She said,
awesome.
You guys are doing a great job. Westworld is a very difficult show to recap. You never know if you should take it as it is or read into every little detail. Dodgy discourse, are you kidding me? No way. So I posted an article where Lifehacker, I believe, was taking a look at a bunch of different Westworld podcasts, and they relegated us to the, if you don't like these first three that we've talked about, there's a whole bunch of other ones that have shoddy production and dodgy discourse. And I was like, oh, well, that's great. That feels awesome. But anyway, thank you, Sue, for playing into my own neuroses about our podcast. And
right.
Paying us the compliment that I was apparently fishing for. So, but yeah, other than that, I think we are ready to keep going.
Let's jump into it.
So once again, we get another cold open. The second cold open of the show. I wonder if this is just how it's going to be from here on out.
Yeah.
They said so. We're introduced to the Raj, which is the name of the colonial Indian world, as given on the Delos Destinations website that is affiliated with HBO.
Yep.
So we're introduced to the Raj, a colonial India park where guests can go on safaris and hunt Bengal tigers. A strapping blonde man attempts to seduce a brunette woman. We don't know who is a host, but she shoots him, and she shoots the blonde man to learn that he is a guest, and then has sex with him. We did get a sweet sitar cover of the White Stripes Seven Nation Army. It was quite good. Some awesome Ramin Djawadi arrangement going on there. A few other things to note about this. There's a lot of theories about who this girl is. And some people were like, oh, it's William's daughter. It's Emily.
Yeah.
She's credited as Grace. And there are some things on the website that note that there is a Grace Ha, who is a QA, customer relations or human resources QA person.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really know who she is, but we know that she has been to the park several times. Is something that the actress has revealed in interviews.
Okay.
So I don't think she's Emily. She could be. We'll find out, I guess.
Maybe she changed her name for anonymity.
Potentially. Maybe she doesn't want to be anything.
Doesn't want to be treated differently in the park.
Or she doesn't want to be known. We know that Emily resents William for what he did to his wife, essentially. For essentially causing her to kill herself. So
yeah,
maybe she wants nothing to do with him, but she still loves the Raj, apparently. What did you think about the idea that you don't know if you're hooking up with another guest or a host, so you shoot each other? I
mean, it's a new way to handle Tinder, I suppose. Instead of swiping right, you can shoot someone in the chest with a gun.
Are you real
I don't condone that action, by the way.
Yeah,
but no, I mean, that's the whole point of the park, is to make it as immersive as possible.
Yeah.
So the fact that she's kind of into that and is okay, I don't necessarily want to hook up with hosts. I'd rather have a connection with an actual human being and know that it's a real connection and not one that's been pre-programmed. I think that's an interesting.
Well, the other interesting thing about it is that when he sits down at the table and starts talking to her, this Indian man walks up and it says, "The governor has invited you," and he's like, "I don't care." It's like the park has these things built in to pull hosts or to pull guests apart to give them their own special
storyline. Yeah.
But it's weird to me that I guess we could read into that as being, if it's two guests sleeping with each other, then they can't extract that DNA off.
Right.
Of a host,
they can't get that. Did she say it or did he say that they're clearly trying to keep them separated?
He mentioned something about it. Later on, he does say, "You think the park would go through the trouble of having one of them pretend to be one of us?" And she's looking at herself in the mirror and says, "I wouldn't put it past them."
Yeah.
which is the first line of dialogue that makes me think she knows more about the park than she's leading on to.
Right. Well, that leads back to our whole theory last time about how they could be using this DNA to make clones, essentially.
Yeah, that's true.
Host clones of actual humans who have visited the park.
Yeah. Yeah, that's entirely possible too. So I feel like there's a lot in this first scene that you can even kind of tease apart from the small details that do happen. I will say the director of this episode did do an interview and came out and stated definitively that the guns are programmed to know what is a host and what's a human. And if they know they're pointed at a human, they're supposed to fire slowly so that the bullet just kind of gives you a welt like a paintball.
But it is still a bullet.
It's still a bullet.
Interesting.
While you point it at a host and it will fire at terminal, like the required velocity to pierce the flesh, essentially. Yeah. So, in terms of the time frame of when this scene happens, he gets shot, and I think that means, and it bounces off of him, whereas later on we know that all the guns are able to hurt humans.
Right.
So we know that this first scene here is happening sometime before Ford kills himself.
Right.
Before he hits the switch to let everything start taking effect.
Yep.
So that's interesting, at least. But we can move on to the next scene. The man and the woman pull up to a tent on their safari trail to rest, but they find something strange when she realizes that there are guests there that were killed, and their host tries to kill them. The blonde man dies, but the woman gets away, only to be hunted by a tiger. She makes her way to the boundary of the park, but the tiger pursues her to a cliff. She manages to get another shot off just as the tiger leaps, and they both tumble into the water below. We get like a little bit of an Indian layer over the Westworld theme in the scene, which I thought was very cool. She opens up her notebook, which she was protective of in that first scene, and she's got this like intertwined hexagon symbol.
I saw that.
That is actually, we've seen it at least 2 other times. One time is later in this episode when Bernard unlocks the package that's in Abernathy's head.
Okay.
The other time is when Charlotte Hale is trying to communicate in the first episode to like to get somebody to come and extract her. So it's on those computers down in the DNA extraction lab.
Okay.
So it's weird that she's got it on like a map. It's like, I'm wondering what this symbol means. I don't know if
she hand drew that map too. So.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if she's seen it anywhere else or I don't know if we've seen it anywhere else in the series.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's anywhere in season 1 hidden. I'm sure someone
there was an article. I don't know if it was like AV Club or who, but somebody was posting about the repetition of certain shapes and signs like in the current season. Specifically going back to the house, Bernard's house.
Yeah, with the cross and the
crosses,
4 dots.
Yeah, the 4 crosses or whatever, like what that symbol shows up in like a whole bunch of different scenes. So
yeah.
But who knows what that means?
And there were people going back to like finding out that it used to mean in like old cartography or something like that there are rocks at the bottom of like a body of water or something like that. Like like it's a danger to not leap, like it's too shallow ground or something like that. But that's a whole nother level of dissecting that we're not quite.
I mean, yeah, maybe that's just the symbol that we're only on the surface.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe.
Bum, bum, bum.
So their guide's name is Ganju, the host that shoots the blonde guy. He does say these violent delights have violent ends, which is interesting. The blonde man says maybe they're giving us our privacy. He says privacy.
Yeah.
And then she says that's not how this works, which is another line of like
she knows something that we don't.
Yeah, she knows that like the hosts are there to keep an eye on
there's a
everything,
task
to do stuff for them. Yeah, there's some bigger thing.
Right.
So that was interesting. The other thing is that I heard this the first time I watched. I heard it a little bit. It sounded like there was like a vocal track to the music, but it turns out that as she's like approaching the edge of the park, you can hear and turn on like the subtitles.
It was like,
attention, you have reached the boundary of the guest experience area. Please turn back. Please turn back. And that plays twice. Very interesting that we see that. There's some type of laser fence that I presume is supposed to stop the hosts and animals, but clearly it was malfunctioning. But no, that tiger looked real good.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
It was that would be a pretty interesting encounter. It makes me wonder how that would have functioned if it were not malfunctioning. Like, what would that tiger be doing?
I think like they were on a safari to hunt the Bengal tiger was what it was. And he was he was hiding in the brush. Like, that's what he does. That's what those tigers do.
But like, I'm wondering, would the tiger have like leapt out at her the same way? How much danger do they really get in the Raj? I don't really know. Like, I just find that kind of an interesting question. So,
well, I think it would also, like, the other hosts that are there to like kind of facilitate the experience are probably there to protect whoever
they can probably like intervene and get mauled,
right?
but the tiger can't actually harm the Interesting.
You can get scratched, get a couple get some cat scratch fever.
Yeah,
but that's about it.
All right. As soon as she leapt up, or as soon as they let the tiger pushed her off the edge there, I was like, oh, this is how that tiger ended up in Westworld.
Yeah.
So that was
made that connection.
That was pretty cool. Then we get the opening. We can move on to the third scene. Bernard and the extraction team head into the mesa. This is taking place. So, all right. That whole first cold open sequence must have taken place like the day that Ford died.
Right, like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So in the 2 weeks ago time frame, she shoots the blonde guy, he just gets the welt on him, and then later on in that day, or however long it takes them to go on their safari thing, whenever they get to that tent, has to be post Ford's death.
Yes.
Because then the guns are working on the humans. So that's kind of where we were in that time frame. But in the next scene, when Bernard and the extraction team head into the mesa, we are now back to the 2 weeks after Ford is dead.
Yes.
Bernard and the team head into the mesa. It's a mess. The control room is down, and there are floors on fire, but they're clear to enter. They meet up with Charlotte Hale, who is in cold storage, with a small group of people who are sealing body bags. No idea if they're hosts or humans, essentially. It looks like there's charred remains of some kind. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but they're cleaning up. Hale asks what took the team so long and if they found what she asked for yet, meaning Peter Abernathy, but they haven't. It appears that Peter keeps slipping away from them, and she asks Bernard where he may be, but Bernard slips back in time. So the black woman that's out there on the extraction team comes to like give the recon report to Carl Strand, the dude who's there, and she says something about the cradle, and I just took the cradle to be like the control room or something of that sort. However, apparently on the websites associated with the show, there was something that mentions that the cradle is actually like the simulation, it's like a simulation engine for the experiences in the park. It's like this actual. So here's what it says on the website. It says, inside Delos, learn about the simulation technology that stores and tests all of our storylines, the Cradle. Delos' time capsule that ensures you get the immersive and dynamic experience you deserve.
So it's the Delos RPG Maker.
Yeah, it's like it's like
now available on Steam for $15.99.
Maybe it's just their command center communication brain, big park computer of some kind that actually automates and makes things work and everything. But the woman on the team says that the cradle is down, like the cradle is not operational essentially. Right. So I found that interesting. So yeah, Charlotte says to Bernard, you made it out alive. Didn't think you had it in you. What the hell took you guys so long? Carl Strand is also looking for Peter Abernathy on behalf of Charlotte Hale. So it's kind of weird to me that there's another Delos presence there working to capture Abernathy, even though they haven't gotten him out yet. Kind of wondering, because when she writes that, the encrypted communication, they're like, we're not sending anybody until you get us our package, and they still don't have the package. So why did Strand end up on the island is the weird question to me. But Hale asks, what about you, Bernard? Do you know where Peter Abernathy is? He seems to be slipping away from us. She seems very skeptical of Bernard. It's weird to her that he's still surviving, and she's just very, I don't know, she's very hesitant, and she doesn't quite understand what is up with Bernard as of yet. Even this 2 weeks later, I don't know if she's fully figured out that he's a host yet.
Right.
But we do see him slip in time all the way back to the days after Ford's death. Did you have anything else about that scene?
I wanted to look up the etymology of the term cradle, but figurative sense of the place where any person or thing is nurtured in the early stages of existence. I find to be an intriguing line of text here.
Maybe it's the birthplace of the hosts. It's the
right, it's what hold, or something that you think of a cradle as something that holds a child, or hold anything really. So holding is the key word here.
The cradle of civilization kind of situation. I don't know.
Which the idea of the cradle of civilization or whatever could be the whole reference, to begin. I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
Yeah, no, I think it seems like
I like the idea of thinking it's the engine that the whole experience runs on, though. It's being held together by this cradle, or whatever, the framework.
Well, and I wonder if the reason it's down is because Ford disabled it, or Ford is the one that did something about it, or in this intervening 2 weeks did Dolores come in and completely hijack it and figure something out. I don't know. I guess we don't know yet. But I wonder if we'll hear mention of the cradle again at some point in the show. So Bernard slips in time. We get back to him and Charlotte on the road, hot on the tail, finding Abernathy. They find him in the care of Rebus, who's hoping to turn in a bunch of formal wear guests in for a bounty.
Rebus he's awesome.
Rebus is great. Well,
he's such a good.
They lure Rebus away and reprogram him to be the, quote, most virtuous and quickest gun in the West, end quote. And so he goes back, kills his crew, and lets the guests, including Abernathy, go. Charlotte and Bernard attempt to intercept and help Abernathy get to the train, but he's a bit of a mess and cycles to an old character who decides to recite the battle hymn of the Republic as the Confederados capture him and Bernard. Charlotte makes off on a horse. Turning Rebus into the exact opposite of what he always is was fantastic.
It was so funny.
And people have made the connection that when we see him get executed at close to the beginning of episode 1 of this season, he steps in between a woman host and the executioner.
Oh, really? I didn't even notice
that.
So
he's still on his virtuous...
he's still running that program.
Yep.
That's funny.
Yeah. Pretty good eye to the people that caught that one. But yeah, I thought that was pretty good. And when he goes to he's like, we've got 10 of these people, or we got 9 people here. I'm going to turn them in for $15 a piece. We're going to have a lot of money. And then Walter is there, and Walter's like, we've got 10 people. Why are you only saying 9? And he's like, well, I'm going to keep one of them. And it's the woman that he then later is like, I'm going to escort you and help you out of this.
Right.
So that was.
And she screams, get away from me, or whatever. It was good.
It was quite good.
I'm trying to help you.
So Rebus is one of those standouts. I'm glad we got to see more of him here, and I hope we start seeing more of him from here on out, because he's good. He's a real good character. But yeah, the other thing I was wondering is the stuff that Rebus says when he walks back up to his group.
You the sick tug mistreating these gentlewomen?
What the fuck are you talking about?
Y'all too? You only ever touch a woman as gently as with the petal of a rose. More than that makes you a coward. Hey, it's okay. I won't let them harm you. Go on. You're free now.
I was like, was this written for him somewhere, or is he just making it up at this?
Right.
Where did that come from? Was it some old character old lines that he doesn't use, or is there some trick to getting Rebus to turn into a good guy when you're a guest and you can get him off of his normal loop? I don't know. I think it's interesting. Abernathy does say that he needs to get to the train, which I think is part of the shell personality that Sizemore gave him last season to try and get him out of there.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty interesting. I don't know if that means that like any other host would actually help him with that quest, but at least maybe it would. Maybe there's probably not much to it. He was just supposed to like get out of cold storage, go run onto the train, and then be free. So at this point, he's just going nuts, which makes sense. So next scene, Dolores meets with the Confederado colonel and convinces him to join forces after showing her power over his men, as well as the threat that faces them the following day. She presents the colonel with one of the modern P-90 machine guns and has him shoot at the security guy that they dunked in the white goo in the previous episode. The colonel lets them into Fort Forlorn Hope, and Teddy expresses his dismay, but Dolores explains that they will need these people to survive. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still not... I was so rallied behind Dolores' cause in season 1.
I'm really not into her storyline at all.
And like
it's the least interesting to me, and I think a lot of that deals from the fact that I keep calling back the idea that she's still just programmed to do what she's doing.
Well, that's
whereas
the
like it
theory
seems
that-
like everyone else is more autonomous.
yes.
But she's just still running out her programming.
That's what people are kind of wondering, is whether or not Dolores did actually achieve consciousness, or did Ford mess up and remove the choice of killing him from her and just basically made her do it. And now she's following out her Wyatt programming, because she refers to herself as Wyatt here.
It reminds me of like playing Fallout 4 and running into... I don't remember his name, but you run into him, and there are instances where like he's patrolling the town, and like you and him are having a conversation, but at the same time, there's like death claws like running in and attacking people, and like he runs off to attack them, but he's still like saying the same line that like he was finishing off telling you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
he's just running program. Like I feel like Dolores is very much the same in that respect. That she's just like going through her motions, and like
That's interesting.
she'll have like other things can happen around her, and she can have an effect on them, but regardless, she's always going to go back to square one and like keep going with her programming, because that's what she's set to do. Unless like she's able to reach some form of like full autonomy at some, when she figures out like, oh, I'm done with this programming, or maybe she completes her task, and like then what does she do? Like she's not going to reset. Like what happens from there?
Well, there were people on Reddit that were talking about the idea that like Dolores is telling people about the freedom that they need to go and like take from humanity, and in doing so she is conscripting them into her control, essentially. Like,
yeah.
But then you go to somebody like Maeve, who is like, yes, she took Sizemore, but like she's gaining the help of like Felix and Armistice and Hector, because she has this goal in mind, but she's like...
Oh, we didn't get to Armistice yet, but I'm really happy she rolled in.
Me too. We'll come back to that. But like all of them, she's uniting them under her cause with like a sense of purpose, whereas Dolores is doing it with like fear and and control, essentially, which is, and like horror. Like she shows Teddy, here's all the times you've died. You need to believe in me. So it's kind of like these two different methodologies of like unification.
It's I think a lot of it's fate and free will related. Yeah. Like Maeve is more of the free will type, whereas Wyatt, aka Dolores, is your fate. She's following a predestined path. Whereas Maeve is like, I'm going to find my daughter. That's what I want to do. And that had nothing to do with her programming at all, other than she had this memory embedded in her brain. Mm-hmm. So she's not following anyone's line of code. She's doing her own thing. So
she's like the only one that we know for certain is not following any programming.
Right.
She's not relying on any past character. Like, we still see and hear Dolores slipping through like Wyatt and old Dolores.
Well, yeah, especially later in this episode.
Yeah. So like there's this sense of Dolores is still relying very heavily on these characters. She says that she's found her own voice, but it doesn't really feel like that's true.
Yeah.
Whereas Maeve feels like the moment she was awoken in season 1, she's been Maeve.
Yeah, she's like a totally different character now.
Yeah. So there was, I did Google search. So if you Google search Virtu e Fortuna, which is the title of this episode, there's a good comicbook.com article here that talks about how it's basically these are like Machiavellian beliefs about the concepts that that a leader must face, where virtu is basically virtue, and instead of like classical virtues that actually mean something more along the lines of like the qualities that make a good leader, and Fortuna or fortune are like luck and circumstance, or the things that a leader can't control but would overcome or help in any kind of like random circumstance, that kind of thing.
Right.
So I think there's some of that at play here with Dolores trying to be a leader, Maeve attempting to be a leader, all of these people trying to struggle with the power, like the power vacuum that's currently in Westworld.
Yeah.
Kind of seeing that all come to play. So I think that's interesting. But if anybody else has any like thoughts about what that title means to the episode, please write in. Those P90s are so sick. I want one. Like, I don't need a real one, but I like the red like
the red body
accent that's on the
in the translucent magazine.
Yes, yeah, it's
very cool.
Very cool design for the security.
I like when she says to the colonel, is it colonel? Yeah, she's like, you're gonna want to hold that tight.
Yeah,
and he totally skips it up and like just like right up and just
Well, that was some of the most fun at the end of the first season, was watching Armistice and Hector play with those. Oh, hell yeah. They're just like, like these are way better than anything we've used before.
Yep.
So the Colonel kind of has the same reaction to it.
Yeah.
Next scene, Sizemore tries to convince Maeve to hide until QA conducts their park-wide sweep, but she remains unconvinced. As they try to cross the stream, members of Ghost Nation trail them. Hector speaks to them in their native tongue and finds out that he and Maeve are free to go if they insist on their current path, but the natives want to take Sizemore. Maeve believes she needs him, so they run, and Sizemore locates an elevator for them to use to get underground. What do you think's up with the natives? Do you have any theories?
I don't have any theories. I was really surprised that they didn't just start shooting bows at them, or arrows rather, using their bows. Yeah, I have no clue what that's all about. I don't know why they would, other than because he created the whole, what was that storyline with the natives that he made? Oh,
Sizemore? Yeah. Sizemore made the it's a really corny name. Something about the river.
Yeah. Like he's essentially their creator, so maybe they see him as a god or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, something along those lines. I don't know. I'm again just spitballing ideas here. But.
Odyssey on Red River was the name of the So you would think he would maybe have an idea of what they're kind of up to, but the fact that he like freaks out about it, he knows that there's something weird going on.
Right.
But. So here's the thing. I don't remember what we have talked about previously on the show, but there have been many theories out there. We knew that in season 1, Stubbs got taken by Ghost Nation members, by natives.
Yep.
And we see him alive in the 2 weeks later timeline. Some people think he might be a host. I don't really know. But the kind of prevailing logic, and the thing that I want to believe is true, is that even though we saw Bernard choking Elsie in season 1, I think Elsie still got away somehow. Like Bernard choked her and sequestered her away at Ford's command. And Elsie has reprogrammed the natives to collect humans in the park and keep them safe.
Interesting.
I like it. I don't have a ton of supporting ideas other than the fact that Stubbs is alive. We see Sizemore, like them trying to get Sizemore here, not killing him, as you said, but trying to collect him and take him. And then also the woman from the Raj gets to the shoreline and she has the natives.
Yep, she runs into them.
Yeah, so it seems like they have this function of finding humans, but we don't know why yet. And my theory is that Elsie is still alive and has tasked them to help.
Interesting. I like that.
So we'll see if that becomes true. I like the idea quite a bit. So yeah, I don't know. Anything else about the Ghost Nation? They are speaking an
actual native tongue.
Yeah,
of sorts.
it's Lakota, which is a native dialect of some kind.
I think they're so badass looking. Like
they are really cool.
Like with their body paint and everything, like the half face mask kind of styling they've got going on. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, no, it's really like some of it's kind of like Day of the Dead-y, like in that like Mexican kind of celebratory type thing, but also just kind of I don't know, it's very interesting. But there are some people saying that you could read what they actually said if you put on subtitles. I put it on there and it just says speaking Lakota in parentheses. But there's somebody who posted screenshots where it just has Hector saying, "We're just passing through, we mean no harm." Then the native says, "You and the woman can continue, but your friend must come with us. There's no place for him in the new world." That's supposedly on HBO Go. I'm using HBO Now.
Interesting.
And then Hector relays back to Maeve, "If we insist on our current path, we're free to go, but they want Sizemore." So there's no reason to not believe it's true, but it's just kind of weird that it works on one service and not on another.
Yeah.
So, on to the next scene here. We've got Bernard and Abernathy are brought into Fort Forlorn Hope, and Dolores recognizes them. She has her father taken to the infirmary and Bernard taken to the jail. Dolores visits her father in the infirmary in order to confide in him, even slipping into her old rural accent. He recognizes her and defaults to his old programming, but as soon as she starts talking to him about how he told her to run away, he starts glitching and telling her that he needs to get on the train. Dolores promises to get him help. Cool to see Bernard, or to see Peter and Dolores cross paths again.
Yeah.
And an interesting kind of way for them to interact. It is cool to hear and see Dolores slip back into that accent when she's like around her father and like accessing that part of her memory and, you know, interfacing with him and dealing with those feelings and like figuring out what that all means.
Right.
And it's also very fun to see, as you were saying with the Fallout New Vegas situation, Abernathy has these very scripted responses to what she's saying. He doesn't improvise very much at all.
"I am bound upon a wheel of fire, that mine own tears do scald like molten lead."
It's all right. I'm here.
Dolores?
Daddy.
Dolores. The calf's in the field. I'm worried. There's blue tongue spreading all through these parts.
It's all right, Daddy. I'll lead him home. Back to the ranch. Do you remember our ranch? The way you'd welcome every morning out on the porch with your coffee. I'd wake up in my own bed, climb down the stairs, find you there, and you'd say,
"You heading out to set down some of this natural splendor?"
So we keep referring back to Splendor with Dolores at least, but I don't know. It was just it's a weirdly moving scene for something that you know is like a manufactured relationship. We're seeing these hosts deal with the fact that they have these familial ties, even though they're programmed familial ties.
Yeah.
So, and once again, I think also kind of feeds into the idea that she's not fully bucked her programming. Like she just kind of falls right back into it when she sits down to talk to him for that minute.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of thoughts right now. I think Dolores' storyline is so boring compared to everyone else's. Like, I just don't have much interest in it, which kind of sucks because she is a huge driving force in this season, clearly. So.
She's like, but they took so long to put us. They took so long in season 1 to make us sympathetic towards the hosts, and now she's like completely.
I just feel like
bloodthirsty.
They're just like drawing out this epic human host battle. I just want to see them all slaughter each other. Like, when is that going to go down? Is it going to be the last episode?
There was a little bit of that in this episode.
A little bit, yeah.
But yeah, we'll get to that. And once again, Lewis Hertham as Peter Abernathy glitching.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Is just so good. I know that they did some digital touch up with that to like help him.
Yeah.
But like his really blue eyes, like they make his eyes pop in a way, and then they just have him like barely getting these words out, and it's just so good. It's fantastic.
I feel like the blue eye thing is almost a dead giveaway that he's something more than just like a normal, there's something more. He's not just a vessel for whatever information they're trying to smuggle out of the park or whatever. Like he is something different.
You're speaking to the James Delos potential.
Yeah, like I think that's like because nobody else. Like if they're I mean, obviously they're visually enhancing his eyes for the show.
Yeah.
I'm sure, but like they're doing that for a reason.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that's the thing. Like they literally put a light in his eyes when he recognizes Dolores.
Yeah.
Which is really, it's a cool effect. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I'm completely of the mind that he was made to be James Delos, but I certainly think the reason they're so concerned with getting the data out of the park is because Delos's data, like his consciousness or whatever, is somewhere in there. That's kind of where I'm more thinking of it, but that doesn't quite square up with him looking at the photo and like that being the thing that glitches him out.
Right.
So I'm wondering if we learn more there. Side note, there's some really weird stuff going on with that. And I didn't mention this last episode, and I heard about some of it on Decoding Westworld and looked into some of the articles out there about it, but the picture that they used was a stock photo up on Getty Images. And It happened to be of this woman who lost one of the America's Next Top Model seasons.
Okay.
They hired her to play William's wife in that last episode that we saw. And she mentioned that it wasn't taken for a stock photo at all. And it turns out that the dude who is credited with the photo on Getty Images or whatever it is has a bunch of other pictures of like cowboys and samurai and Western areas and like all kinds of Westworldly type stuff.
It's like a Getty Images account that's like made to make Westworld content.
Like another viral like ARG thing to me.
Yeah.
But I think one of the plot lines of Future World, which is the sequel to the original movie, was that there are hosts that are made to be imposters and put out in the world to help control. Like there are politicians and things being copied in the park, and then they send the copies out to go and have Delos have influence over the government.
Yeah.
And part of this feels like, oh, this dude who took this photo is a host that HBO put out, and like it's like
right.
I think it's kind of playing into that kind of thing.
Very meta.
And if they pulled that off, and this dude has like a bunch of photos up there, and they've been doing it for the past 3 years or whatever it is.
He's got a verified account on Getty Images.
God, that would be so incredible. But we'll see. So the next scene is one with Maeve, Hector, and Sizemore walking in the hallway. It is not the Armistice one yet, but it's basically Hector realizes that Maeve recognized the native from her past life, and he asks her about it, and they have this very genuine connection that kind of angers Sizemore, because Sizemore's like, no, I didn't write you guys to like want to have connection in your life. I wrote you to be alone, and you know, Hector, you have love for Isabella. You're not supposed to love anybody else. And then Hector pins him up against the wall. He says, "You don't know who I am."
You don't know who I am. No laws bind me.
Darling, he's fragile.
When I awoke in the place where you play God, I realized Isabella was a lie. Just words in my head. But this is true. She's my light. She's all I ever dreamed life could be.
And then there's this bit, really dampens the knickers. And when she died, the dream died with her. And I dared dream no more. So maybe I do know you. Just a bit.
I don't know. It's just a very interesting, like, microcosm of the idea of, like, yes, these two people aren't supposed to fall in love. They're programmed to not want to fall in love, but yet they still did. However, the feelings that Hector has were actually, like, scripted and given to him too. So it's kind of this, like, weird.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, that's how, like, real emotions kind of work in a way. I mean, like, for instance, like, you fall in love for the first time and you have, like, that feeling of like, you know, you learn or you experience the butterflies in your stomach, yada yada, like your heart's pounding, whatever, and then things happen and that relationship falls apart. You meet someone else who is able to ignite those same feelings in you that you had the first time around or whatever. So even though, like, these things are scripted, you know, it's similar in the way that, like, you kind of script out those feelings in yourself as a human. And then,
well, and even it could be you, like, emulating, like, I think a lot of what people are saying, or what some psychologists, or I don't know, I'm pulling this out of my ass, but the idea that, like, you gain a lot of how you interact with a partner from the people who raise you, watching your parents and seeing how they interact and that kind of thing. So it's kind of,
like they say, like, you can tell if you want to see how a man's going to treat you, see how he treats his mother, kind of thing. Like,
so it's all kind of, that it makes sense. It's like, you know, like, Hector has this blueprint in him for love.
And women with daddy issues, like, you know, there's
but just because he has that blueprint doesn't, and now that he's kind of been somewhat unlocked,
he's able to apply that blueprint to other relationships, not just the one he was programmed for to begin with.
No, that's very cool. It's a very interesting.
And I mean, same thing
aspect
for Maeve too. I mean, she was supposed to be a prostitute, you know, and a loner or whatever, but clearly, like, she also, like, tweaked all of her stats to, like, max. She's like max. She is the level 99 in Final Fantasy. Like, she is everything. So, I mean, she has reached a level of consciousness and sentience that, like, no one else in the park necessarily has, except
potentially that humans don't really.
Not on that level, at least. The idea of, like, using 10% of your brain, you're only really actually using 10% of it at any given time, but you use the whole brain. Like, she's actually using her whole brain
all the time. That's very good.
Armistice.
1 second. Maeve mentions so after this whole blow up between Hector and Sizemore, Maeve talks to Sizemore. She kind of judges him for the fact she's like, "Did you have an Isabella?" And he's like, "Yeah, she left me. She didn't die or anything like that." And then she's like, "Well, this is all very sad. You put her into a narrative so you could kill her, and then you made the man that you wanted to be." Like, Sizemore's like unwilling to acknowledge that. Yes, that's exactly what he did. I thought that was pretty good. So,
again, proving that Maeve is on a whole different level.
Yes.
She's able to just dissect Sizemore, like, completely.
Absolutely, yeah, or any human, really.
Yeah.
So then, next scene, Dolores meets with Bernard, wondering if there's any Arnold in him. She shows him her sick father and requests that Bernard fix him. Bernard wonders what Dolores really wants, and she mentions that she wants to dominate the world. She mentions the beauty in what they are, and a kind who will never die that is fighting to live, and the questions whether or not they should fight to survive. There's a lot of good dialogue in here, and basically things about this is where the comments of Dolores saying, my whole life has been dictated by someone else, someone who's been saying you will, but now I feel like I've discovered my own voice that says I may. It sounds like neither of us really believe that as of yet.
Yeah.
That she's fully there. She's still kind of bouncing between personalities, but we also learn here that Bernard has never been outside of the park, or at least Dolores doesn't think that Bernard has been outside of the park. He kind of comments on the fact that, like, oh, this park is just a tiny speck of this gigantic world that you would never begin to be able to rule. But Dolores is like, I've seen it. It's no different than here. In fact, it's basically less violent and less challenging to be in the real world than it is to be in Westworld. So I don't know. I just think it's very curious that Bernard hasn't been out there, but like Arnold clearly has. So I guess I have to correct a little bit of what I said last episode. We were commenting on the whole James Delos potentially transferring his consciousness into someone, and I said that Ford did that with Bernard. He didn't really. He just created Bernard.
Right.
He created someone who was like Arnold, gave him all the same mannerisms, some of the same knowledge, and even some of the most, I don't know, some of the emotional touchstones that he knew that Arnold had.
Right.
But he doesn't have all of those experiences of Arnold. He can't draw on any of those past memories because he doesn't have any of that.
Yeah.
So, as far as we know, they have not put anyone's consciousness into a host as of yet.
Well, that's kind of ties into how, I don't remember if I said it or you were talking about it, but the idea that they not putting consciousness necessarily into a host, but again, cloning these humans, and maybe Bernard was more of the test of how accurately could I clone someone to be as close to this original copy.
Because I think we're led to believe that there's some time between when Arnold dies and Bernard is made. So it's not like Ford would have been able to even scan Arnold's brain to make some kind of facsimile of it.
Right.
He was just making it whole cloth from the technology that they had.
Right.
So he's some type of test or step into, can we make a conceivably imperceptible clone
right
of this person out of a host? Yeah. Here we go. Now it's time. Maeve, Hector, and Sizemore meet back up with Armistice, who appears to have found a robotic arm to replace her fleshy one.
I love her.
She has accosted Felix and Sylvester, who are bound to an elevator. They untie them and retrieve a grenade from underneath Sylvester's chin, presumably to make him shut up, and then they head up the elevator.
But you missed the great line that Hector says when she rolls in with a flamethrower.
Yeah, she has a dragon.
She has a dragon.
It's very good.
So good.
It's very good.
She's just such a badass.
So if people don't remember, there is a post-credit sequence in the finale of season 1 where Armistice takes a knife to her own arm, which got caught into a door when they were trying to get Maeve out of there.
Yes.
So the fact that she has reappeared and has this robotic arm means that she's apparently very resourceful and managed to stave off the people who were trying to kill her.
She's so badass.
She's really, really cool.
She's like, it's like meeting Vincent Valentine for the first time in Final Fantasy VII. You're just like, oh my God, I love this person.
Yeah, she's very good. She and I think the person who played Teresa Cullen in the last season, I think are both some type of Norwegian descent, or like I should have done more research on this, but the people who they managed to pull from Europe to be in this show have always been awesome.
Yeah,
like they're very unique personalities, and they do a lot. Like we've seen Armistice in a few different snapshots doing different things. We saw her as a sheriff in the last episode. She was also serving drinks at the party too, but like she just has this like commanding presence about her that you wouldn't expect a beautiful blonde woman to have, given like today's gender roles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the fact that they put her out there and she's basically the best gun in Westworld.
She's just a total all-around badass.
Yeah, it's very awesome. So I'm glad she's back in the show.
Yep.
I'm also glad Felix and Sylvester are back.
Yeah, they're fun.
They got annoying last season because it was like, why in the hell are you doing any of what Maeve wants you to do? But now that we're past that and it's just them and like uncharted or way out of their comfort zone, as Felix says.
Well, and it's again, it's cool to see Maeve, who again is completely unlocked. She's not. We've unlocked her.
She has
bootloader.
bucked her programming.
Yeah, we've unlocked her bootloader and we've flashed a new ROM. So it's cool to see her have a connection with previous people who have helped her, and she's still trying to help them. Like, so obviously, like, she understands like human relationships and interaction, and she doesn't necessarily want to like hurt them.
Yeah, that's the thing about Maeve, is that I think she ultimately realizes that like it might not all be coming from a place of like humans have a place in this world, but I think she realizes that like these people can help me and there's no reason for me to just wantonly murder everybody that I come across.
Yeah, but I also think it's I just think it is more emotionally rooted with her because she is actually in touch with feelings more so than it seems other hosts are.
Yeah. No, that's entirely true.
So
Sylvester with the grenade under his chin.
that was funny. That was a good one.
And
I like how slowly Armistice puts the pin back in, like right in front of his face.
Yep.
That was good. Just taunting him.
Yes, absolutely.
He is super annoying, though. He's probably like the most annoying character in the whole show.
Yeah. No, yeah, he certainly. I'm curious how her bionic arm functions with her host's flesh body. Because at first I was like, oh, it's like she just tore the skin off of her arm. But
she got it from Cyberpunk World. So that one's not on the Delos website yet.
Deus Ex World.
Yeah, Deus Ex World.
Number 5.
Cyberpunk 2077 World.
So it makes sense that like Delos would have that type of prosthetic.
Well, maybe
stuff.
it's kind of a hint to William's bionic arms that I keep ranting about. Maybe he does actually have them, and they're covered in the fake flesh, like I've been saying.
That's entirely possible.
So just throwing that out there.
You will be so vindicated if at the
hell
end.
Yeah! Oh my God! He just like screws off one of his arms and puts it on the table and puts on like a cannon, and he can just. He turns into Barrett from Final Fantasy VII. So many Final Fantasy references this time around.
Yeah, you're going off the wall with all the video game stuff, but that's what Tom. That's
what Tom likes. Yeah,
so this is all for you, Tom.
It is.
Anything else about that Armistice scene? I think that's all we get at that point.
No, I love her.
Up in the elevator.
She's so awesome.
Yeah. Next scene, Bernard plays coy about what is stored in Abernathy's brain to Dolores. She resists his call to get Abernathy out of there, despite the fact that he's wanted and Delos will be chasing after him due to the big file that's in his brain. Dolores recognizes that Abernathy is like a mule in this scene. Like he's being used for some other purposes by humans, and she resents it and wants to fix the issue, essentially.
It's part of her bad programming.
But it was interesting for me. Number one, Bernard obviously starting to shake a lot more. Number two, the fact that he plays so coy with Dolores, and Dolores doesn't immediately know that he's messing with her.
Yeah.
Although, no, I did just realize I went back and watched the scenes between Bernard and Charlotte in the first episode of the season, and he doesn't know that is all the park data. She doesn't tell him what the file is.
Yeah.
He might be able to infer it, but he doesn't really know what it is. But he doesn't tell Dolores that he knows that there's something wrong with Peter.
Yeah.
He's just like, okay, I'll help you. And then he's kind of digging in there himself. But it's obviously very encrypted. He doesn't have immediate access to it. So, anything else in that scene?
Nope.
Next scene, Hale meets up with the QA suite team. They're ready to shoot her until she says she's human, and then she has them scan the back of her neck. I wasn't sure at first why, but then I realized that I think they're around the vertebrae where there would be an explosive if it was a host. because all the hosts have explosives in their vertebrae, in a particular vertebrae, so that if they try to leave the park, they can be blown up. So I think that's what was going on here. I think that's how they were able to identify that she's a human.
What movie was it? A movie I just saw where they were that particular area of the neck was where they would insert the chip. Oh God. Maybe it's a Dark Angel reference to the barcode on the back of her neck. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing.
No, I mean obviously.
There's some movie I recently watched where they oh no, it's that new Netflix show.
Altered Carbon.
Yes. They get the vertebrae, that single vertebrae in the back of their neck is the consciousness that gets embedded in them.
Interesting.
So
maybe it's the greater Android universe.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just, some of that Blade Runner nonsense.
Yeah. So no, I think they were looking for I think that's something that detects if it's an explosive or not.
Yeah.
But we'll see. If anybody else has any ideas, write in.
Like they bring out the SKU reader, they read her barcode, they're like, she's human, let her go.
Well, they could put that. Here's the thing: is that they could put that barcode on anybody. Like
no,
if it was an RFID tag, they could put an RFID tag.
Yeah, they could just
any of the hosts.
tattoo anybody with it.
But that vertebrae being an explosive should be unique to the hosts, except for Maeve, obviously. Which I was wondering if this is like a Chekhov's gun moment of this is maybe how Maeve will get past this sweep.
Yeah.
Is that they'll be able to scan her and see, oh, she doesn't have this, so we're going to let her out.
Yeah.
But then that could also lead to Bernard not making it out if he is indeed, if Ford made him with that explosive in there.
Right.
But we don't know. So once the sweep team realize who Hale is, she overrides their orders to escort her elsewhere and pulls a team to go retrieve Peter Abernathy from Fort Forlorn Hope. Not a whole lot else here. Some people on Reddit were confused because they thought the scene that took place 2 weeks later with Charlotte Hale was in the same time frame as this because they're both underground and in like the darkened hallways and stuff like that. But that's not the case as far as I understand. So next scene, the Confederado scouts report back to the colonel that the QA team is coming up from the ground. He and Dolores discuss their plan. The Confederados hold the line until the last minute while they'll blow up a bunch of nitroglycerin that has been put in the ground to destroy the QA team. Pretty self-explanatory.
Yep.
Fun to see nitroglycerin come back because that was what El Lazo was making a deal to get to the Confederados, but then took away in season 1. Like he steals it back. He double crosses them.
Yeah.
In the young William time frame. So, bunch of little scenes here. So number 14, Bernard somehow successfully decrypts the data in Peter Abernathy's head, but we don't get to see what he does with it. All right. So this is another great scene where Peter Abernathy's glitching. He starts to whip out his like violent delights Shakespearean professor dialogue that he was originally giving to Ford and Bernard when he said that he was going to kill them.
Yeah.
And he almost has this look of recognition on his face when he sees who Bernard is and he starts saying that stuff. But then it completely leaves him again and he starts glitching, which fantastic performance to see him like seamlessly move through these different states
turn it on and turn it off.
It's
on a whim.
So great. It's great. But then also this is when he freezes up, and when he freezes up, the decryption comes through essentially. That's when Bernard's using like some utility on the Delos tablet that is like an encryption breaker. And he like keeps trying to do it, and it finally breaks through. And when it does, Peter Abernathy like seizes up essentially. So I thought that was interesting. I don't really know what that means.
Right.
If he was like programmed with an ability to stop the decryption, and then finally it like went through and he couldn't stop it anymore. I don't know. Just me spitballing, but I just thought it was interesting that he had like a physiological response to the decryption. Right. But and this is where we see that intertwined hexagon thing again, when it unlocks,
on the
it
tablet.
pops up on the tablet. So, all right. And then this is where there's like a bunch of little scenes that all coincide with the big war that happens. So bear with me as I go through this. The QA sweep team heads to Fort Forlorn Hope with the machine guns and ATVs in hand, but the Confederados hold their own long enough for Dolores to pull her men back and lock the gates. The colonel finally calls out for his men to retreat, but it's too late. Dolores' masked crew execute the Confederados gathered at the closed gate, and Dolores orders Angela to blow the nitro, decimating the QA sweep team. That's all pretty straightforward.
Yes.
In the meantime, Charlotte Hale's small group of QA people manage to sneak in and take Peter Abernathy away from Bernard, who hides in the corner and remains behind. He tries to escape after that in the midst of the battle, but Clementine spots him and knocks him out. Good to see Clementine back, by the way.
She's like just dead, and
it's really weird.
Like zombie-like almost. It's really weird.
Well, she was in cold storage. She did get lobotomized.
Okay.
In that first season.
So she's just a drone, basically.
Well, but the same thing happened to Abernathy. So it's kind of weird to me that, like, I'm still wondering what the lobotomy action does to them, what it's supposed to do. Because they put a drill up through their nose, and it does something. But they can clearly still function in some sort of way, and it didn't really do anything to Abernathy. So I'm not really sure that they figured out what they wanted that to mean in the first season.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Maybe they drain out all the goo.
Yeah, they just drain the goo out, and then it overheats them, and they can't do anything.
Yeah.
They enter their death subroutine or whatever, like Bernard. But no, she's very clearly like
a zombie.
Yeah, she's the most zombie-like out of any of the hosts that we've seen. Even the ones that have been shot in front of us. And
she's
brought
like
back
a scary-looking chick too.
I'm not going to call her scary-looking, but she has a very distinctive look to her. Like, she certainly looks unlike anyone else that I've seen in life. So
she's kind of creepy.
It's interesting. All right, and then after the battle, Major Craddock takes issue with Dolores' deception, so she orders him and the remaining Confederados executed by Teddy out back. Craddock gets to Teddy explaining how similar they are and that they serve tyrants, and Teddy takes aim but ultimately can't bring himself to kill Craddock, so he sends Craddock and his crew off, with Dolores secretly disapproving of this act of mercy. So that was everything.
Yep.
That exchange, so Craddock says to Teddy, he says, I've been watching you. We ain't so different. You and I both triggermen to tyrants, except me. I know what I want, but you ain't even sure about that termagant, which is a term for like an overbearing woman or something like that I've never heard. But you ain't even sure about that termagant you take orders from. I'd look at you and what I see is pathetic. And once again, we're seeing Teddy to me seems more aware and woke and conscious than Dolores is, because he's actually struggling with these feelings that he's having of everything that Dolores is doing is horrible. So to see him make this choice to let them go feels like he's like this can almost be his awakening. I don't know. It's Teddy to me is the most interesting part of that side of the storyline.
Yeah, because you're watching him cope with emotions for the first time, in a way, and not necessarily like is he, how unlocked is he?
It's really hard to know because he didn't know who Abernathy was, even though he has interacted with Dolores' father before. So he had clearly gotten the overriding update of like, oh, Dolores has a new dad. Delete old dad.
Right.
But so he doesn't have all of his memories unlocked. He does know that he's been killed several times and brought back. So he's in this weird limbo state of like possibly conscious but possibly not.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just self-discovery. He's just trying to figure out who he is.
He's kind of more naturally arriving at it rather than arriving at it from his memories, which We do see him at the end of season 1 fight his programming to go and save Dolores from William in like outside of the old chapel where they find the maze, and William's like beating her up. He tries to go save William, I think, or save Dolores. I think William maybe shoots him or something like that, and Dolores ends up dealing with William herself. But he does buck his programming.
Yeah.
He remembers her, heads back over there. So I don't know. He's in this really weird state where we don't quite exactly know where he's at.
Yeah.
So, all right. Next scene. The woman from the Raj emerges not far from where the extraction team will eventually find the tiger that she shot washed up on the shore. So this is still taking place a few days after Ford died.
Yep.
But before the 2 weeks later where they find that tiger and are like, what is this doing here? So she is the reason that the tiger ended up there. As she collects herself, 3 Ghost Nation men walk up and menacingly look over her. They are holding a knife. One of them has a knife, like they're ready to scalp her or something like that. But I think it's a red herring. I think it's just their way of forcing people into complying with them.
Right.
So
come with me if you want to live.
Yes, exactly. And then finally, the last scene, my favorite scene of the entire episode.
Yep.
Maeve and crew find themselves at what Sizemore thinks is the northern end of the park. After pausing to experience the snow, Maeve spots a fire and everyone goes to check it out. Just as Sizemore returns to the group after finding a decapitated Asian head, a sword-wielding samurai in the shadows charges at Maeve. Oh, God.
It's so good.
I'm so ready. My body is ready for Shogun World.
It's going to be awesome.
I was reading something today that people were like, these hosts are designed to wield swords at a very high skill level. So it's like Shogun World is the Dark Souls of the Delos parks. Like it is meant to be the hardest park to live in, essentially. Because you're not just shooting at somebody from a distance. You have to literally go and fight samurai.
Hand to hand or sword to sword.
Which is so rad. And I'm so excited to see it happen.
Yeah, it's Bushido Blade.
Absolutely.
Bushido Blade. Yeah.
So,
Onimusha World.
The head that Sizemore pulls out looks like it's in like a ninja garb of some kind, which I think is...
Was it ninja garb? I thought it had a helmet, like more of like a samurai helmet.
Maybe it was a helmet. I don't know. It was hard to see because it's so dark.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure if it was a helmet or if it was like... I felt like you could just see like the oval of the eyes or whatever, like a stereotypical...
Because I thought, wasn't he
looks.
digging the helmet out and then he like picks it up and pulls it up and it comes up with the head?
Yeah, you're probably right.
I'm pretty sure it's a helmet.
I think you're right. So it's just another samurai buried in the snow. But I guess I'm wondering, is this an instance of the samurai making it over to Westworld, or did they go too far in the tunnels and have ended up in Shogun World is my question. Did the samurai leak into Westworld or not? So we'll find out. I'm pretty sure they're just in Shogun World. But
yeah, I would think so.
And I'm wondering
because
why.
they went through the tunnels.
Yeah.
So, and they don't know where they ended up.
Sizemore is not as good a guide as he hyped himself up to be, obviously.
Well, and I would venture to guess that he only really knows Westworld and doesn't really know the other parks, because I'm assuming the other parks had different handlers.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that the idea that Shogun World is the hardest park to like survive in, or would be if the host went nuts. The fact that Sizemore is so freaked when he finds that head. Yeah. He's like, no, we need to go back. Like, he runs up to them and is just terrified of what he found. So it's like he knows that they're like, oh, God, these samurai are going to murder all of us. So I'm so pumped to get to see more of Shogun World.
Yeah, it's going to be sweet.
I'm wondering if they'll do what they did and kind of like put this crew away for an episode and we won't get to see it until episode 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
But I have also heard, and this is kind of spoilery, but kind of not. Episode 4 is supposed to be fairly long, and it's one that everybody who's seen like pre-screen copies has been like, this is one of the best episodes of Westworld that has ever been.
That's exciting.
So I'm super pumped for next week.
Yeah, it's like an hour and 20 minutes or something like that.
It's longer than an hour is what I know for sure. I don't know what the actual runtime is, but it should be good.
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it.
I mean, I'm not going to be disappointed. I don't think.
No.
Nothing's really like, as much as I don't like Dolores's like whole spiel. It's not disappointing to watch. Still, it's still entertaining.
Yeah.
She's just boring.
I can tell that it's heading somewhere, but the way that they are portraying Dolores versus how she was portrayed last season, it's a very clear and conscious choice made by the showrunners.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like they are using as deft of a hand when, like, Nick mentioned that Dolores was doing her cult leader shtick to win these people over.
Yeah.
It's not working on us, the audience.
But it's not meant to. We're human. It's meant to work on hosts.
Yes, but from a storytelling standpoint, you would hope that they, like, we cared about her and her plight in season 1.
Maybe the people who are watching the show who get it and like it are actually hosts in real life.
Maybe the dude who took the pictures for Getty Images.
He's not a real person.
Yeah, he's a host.
I don't know.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this episode?
I'm ready for bed.
All right. We can wrap it up then. Once again, you can find more episodes of our podcast on westworld.fm. We're also on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music, all of the other podcatchers. Check us out. You can find us, especially if you're already hearing this. We're also Westworld FM on Twitter, and you can email us at westworldfm@gmail.com. Tell us what you think of our show and share your thoughts on HBO's Westworld. We will read things such as corrections, observations, or anything regarding Westworld or our podcast. Effusive praise, major complaints about our show, anything.
What was the disruptive Discord or something like that?
It was dodgy discourse.
Dodgy discourse.
Yes. Tell us about our dodgy discourse and shoddy production values.
I mean, whatever.
Yeah, we can talk about that off air. The Midwest Podcast Network has several other shows about video games, horror movies, and more. Check out all of our shows at MidwestPodcastNetwork.com. Make sure you go to patreon.com/MidwestPodNet if you want to throw us $1 a month. We would greatly appreciate that.
Just $1.
Yeah, that's all we need.
4 quarters.
If everybody listening to this gave us $1, we would make more than enough money to make up for the 4 years that, or for the 6 years that we haven't been making money making podcasts.
$1 is like 2 Home Depot hot dogs. Or like not Costco. $1.50 is a Costco hot dog combo.
Yeah, so give us 2/3 of your hot dog combo from Costco.
Yeah.
And we will continue making over an hour of content for you on most weeks.
I'll tell you what, though, that $1.50 hot dog combo is it is A+.
I think we're worth more than a hot dog combo, but I could be wrong.
If you come to the Midwest and you want to hang out with us and buy me a hot dog combo, you can do so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's our. If you pay us $1,000, we'll fly you to Detroit.
He'll fly you here, and
we'll go eat a hot dog.
We'll
from
go get Costco hot dogs.
All right, we gotta get.
I want to know how many hot dogs Nick has eaten from Costco.
Our theme music is Industrial Cinematic by Kevin MacLeod, and it's being used under an Attribution Creative Commons license. That's it for our episode this week. We're excited for the next episode of Westworld, and we'll have another one of our episodes out after that. But until then, may you rest and have a deep and dreamless slumber.